The Vandals, a Germanic people shrouded in both mystery and infamy, who left their mark on the annals of history during the tumultuous era of late antiquity. Originating from the vast expanse of Central and Eastern Europe, the Vandals gradually emerged as a formidable force, shaping the politics of the Roman world through conquest and conflict. With their migrations across Europe and subsequent establishment of a kingdom in North Africa, the Vandals embarked on a journey marked by religious strife, military prowess, and ultimately a dramatic downfall at the hands of the Byzantines. Hello everyone, welcome. If you're new here, it's good to meet you, and if you're coming back, it's great to have you again. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to follow the links to the Patreon. Otherwise, if you feel inclined to like, subscribe, and leave your comments below, that helps the algorithm. Without further ado, let's get into our topic today, a full history of the Vandals. Let's start from the beginning. The earliest mentions of the Vandals traces back to the writings of Pliny the Elder. In his expansive accounts, he refers to the Vandili, encompassing a significant faction among the Germanic tribes. Pliny delineates several tribes within this grouping, including the Burgundians, Varini, Carini, a somewhat enigmatic mention, and the Gutones, most likely referring to the Goths. Tacitus, another venerable chronicler of antiquity, also includes the Vandals in his narratives. He speaks of the Vandili, integrating them into the rich tapestry of German folklore that seeks to elucidate the lineage of these peoples. Alongside legendary groups like the Marsi, Gambrivi, and Suebi, Tacitus hints at the Vandals being one of the ancient clans, though he leaves their dwelling places and constituent peoples shrouded in mystery. Nonetheless, Tacitus and Ptolemy provide clues hinting at the Vandals' probable habitat during this area, and that was likely situated between the Oder and Vistula rivers. Ptolemy, mapping the known world, at least known to the Romans, contributes further to the comprehension of the Vandals' territory. He mentions the Silingi, later identified as one and the same as Vandals, residing to the south of the Semnones, a Suebian tribe dwelling along the Elbe River, and extending their influence towards the Oder River. As the historical narrative unfolds, new characters emerge in the saga of the Vandals. The Hasdingi, who would eventually lead the fateful expedition to Carthage, emerge from the shadows of the 2nd century. Amid the upheaval of the Marcomannic Wars. Similarly, the Lacringi make their debut in the annals of the 3rd century, adding another layer to the intricate tapestry of Vandal history. The historical puzzle of the Vandals becomes more intricate with the mention of the Lugi, another group often intertwined with their narrative. Now, early classical sources, including Strabo, Tacitus, and Ptolemy, speak of the Lugi as a sizable confederation of tribes inhabiting the region between the Vistula and Oder rivers. Strabo and Ptolemy make no mention of the Vandals, and focus solely on the Lugi. while Tacitus briefly references them in a discourse on the ancestry of the Germanic peoples, without specifying their location. Conversely, Pliny the Elder mentions the Vandals, but he neglects to mention the Lugi. Well, what about modern scholars? Well, some modern scholars have observed Ptolemy's apparent differentiation between the Silingi and the Lugi. Similarly, when the Hastings first emerge in Roman records during the 2nd century, they too are distinguished from the Lugi. Herwig Wolfram suggests a symbiotic relationship between the Lugians and the Vandals, proposing that they constituted a single cultic community residing in the Oder region of Silesia, transitioning from Celtic to Germanic dominance little by little over time. Now, archaeologically, the Vandals find association with the Przeworsk culture. Pardon the Russian pronunciation. Perhaps it's Polish. That's even worse. A complex phenomenon extending across several Central and Eastern European peoples. The exact origin, ethnicity, and linguistic affiliation of the Przeworsk culture remain subjects of vigorous debate, and will most likely continue to do so for some time until we find something a little more concrete. Now, we have found out that cremation was the predominant funerary practice among the bearers of this culture, with occasional instances of inhumation. Now, turning to language and linguistics, the Vandalic tongue unfortunately remains somewhat lost to time and shrouded in quite a bit of historical mystery. Very scant information is available, but we do believe it to belong to the East Germanic linguistic branch, akin to Gothic. Vandalic has left behind a sparse textual records. Now the Goths, on the other hand, their linguistic cousins, have bequeathed the sole surviving corpus of East Germanic language, notably a 4th century translation of the Gospels. Now, in the 2nd century, the gaze of Roman authors alighted upon 2 or possibly 3 Vandal groups, the Silingi, the Hasdingi, and potentially the Lacringi, who are mentioned alongside the Hasdingi. Among these 3 groups, only the Silingi had garnered early attention in Roman works, their presence linked to the region of Silesia. So, let's get back to around the time of the Marcomannic Wars. Now, the Marcomannic Wars, just before we go forward, were effectively the Germans trying to find their way into Roman territory and having a very barbarian Germanic time of doing it. Widespread devastation. Well, that was at the time when the Vandalic peoples emerged onto the stage of history. At that time in the Marcomannic Wars, it was the inaugural breach of Italy's borders during the Roman Empire era. The Roman Republic had already passed. Well, a lot of people had a somewhat false sense of security. Indeed, who could breach the empire? Certainly not barbarians. Right? Well, spoiler alert, they did. And the Marcomannic Wars were not the first or the last times. But to find out about the subsequent after-parties of the Marcomannic Wars, I suppose you'll just have to keep following my videos as I'll get to it soon enough. Now I digress. It was during these conflicts, spanning for about 14 years between 166 to 180, that the Hasdingi people, under the leadership of Kings Raus and Rapt, or Ros and Raptus, depending on what source, ventured southwards, initially aligning themselves as Rome and allies. However, their presence in Dacia soon turned problematic, prompting their further southward migration towards the lower Danube region. Accompanying the Hasdingi were the Lacringi, who were also likely of Vandalic stock. Now, the year 271 AD, the Roman Emperor Aurelian found himself compelled to safeguard the middle reaches of the Danube against Vandal incursions. A negotiated peace saw the Vandals settling on the eastern bank of the Danube. In 278, Zosimus recounted Emperor Probus's triumph over the Vandals and Burgundians near a river. That's all he mentions in the source, a river. It's often suggested to be the Lech River, but we're not entirely sure. Well, either way, he subsequently dispatched many of them to Britain after the victory. Concurrently, the 11th panegyric to Maximian, delivered in 291, chronicled two distinct conflicts beyond the empire's border. In one, Burgundians joined forces with the Alemanni, while in another engagement, other Vandals, likely the Hasdingi, skirmished with Gepids in the Carpathian region. According to Getica, by the chronicler Jordanes, Getica was mainly a chronicle surrounding Gothic history. The Hasdingi Vandals found themselves embroiled in a conflict with the Goths around the era of Constantine the Great, so we're talking between 300 to 320 sort of time. At that time, these Vandals inhabited territories later claimed by the Gepids. They were encircled by the Goths to the east, the Marcomanni to the west, the Hermanduri to the north, and the Danube to the south. The Gothic king, Geberic, launched an assault against the Vandals, resulting in the death of their king, Visimar. Subsequently, the Vandals undertook a migration to the neighboring region of Pannonia. Around 330, during the reign of Constantine the Great, they were granted lands on the right bank of the Danube, where they resided for the ensuing 60 years. The 4th century transitioned into the 5th. The renowned Magister Militum Stilicho, chief minister of Emperor Honorius, was reputedly of Vandal lineage. Vandals launched a raid into the Roman province of Raetia during the winter of 401 to 402. It is suggested that this incursion indicates the Vandals were situated in the vicinity of the middle and upper Danube at the time. It's plausible that these middle Danubian Vandals participated in the Gothic king Radagaisus' invasion of Italy in 405 to 406. While the Hasdingian Vandals had established themselves in the middle Danube region for centuries, the whereabouts of the Silingian Vandals remained less certain, although conjectures abound. it is speculated that they may have inhabited Silesia. In the realm of Britannia, the year 278 marked a significant juncture, as Emperor Probus, triumphing over the Vandals and the Burgundians, chose to relocate many of them to the distant shores of Britain. That's a long way from home, and way too far to walk. The exact location of their settlement remains a mystery. Yet, the modern-day Silchester emerges as a probable contender. Notably, I'm sure you did notice it, this city bears the name of the Silingi. Silchester, Silingi, right? One of the Vandalic tribes, and stands as one of only 6 Roman British cities that did not endure into the sub-Roman era. Furthermore, Silchester's fate appears tied with the ominous shadow of a ritual curse, likely invoked by the Anglo-Saxons, preceding its eventual abandonment. Venturing beyond the confines of Britannia, the Vandals made their presence felt in Gaul in the year 405. Advancing from Pannonia, they journeyed westward along the Danube with relative ease. However, upon reaching the formidable barrier of the Rhine, they encountered staunch resistance from the Franks, who held sway over Romanized territories in northern Gaul. According to the accounts from the Frigerides fragment, relayed by Gregory of Tours, approximately 20,000 Vandals, including their leader at the time, Godegisel, perished in the ensuing Vandal-Frankish conflict. Yet, with the timely intervention of the Alans, the Vandals ultimately emerged victorious, albeit it was a Pyrrhic victory. On December the 31st, 405, possibly aided by the icy grip of winter, the Vandals crossed the Rhine, their incursion into Gaul heralding a devastating wave of destruction. Under the leadership of Godegisel's son, Gunderic, the Vandals embarked on a relentless campaign of plunder, ravaging their way westward and southward through the region of Aquitaine. On a fateful day, October the 13th, 409, the Vandals crossed the imposing barrier of the Pyrenees, venturing into the heart of the Iberian Peninsula. It was there that they found themselves in a land ripe with opportunity, the Promised Land. The Hasdingi were granted land by the Romans in Asturia, nestled in the northwest, while the Silingi found their domain in Hispania Baetica to the south. The Alans, in turn, were bestowed with territories in Lusitania, stretching across the west, and the vicinity surrounding Carthago Nova. That's all the way over near southeast Spain, Carthago Nova being New Carthage. Well, it wasn't Carthage's anymore, they were long gone, but the name was still there. However, their newfound prosperity was not to go unnoticed nor unchallenged. The Suebi held sway over parts of Galatia, and soon the Visigoths, acting upon the bidding of the Romans, entered Iberia. In a series of decisive engagements, they vanquished the Silingi Vandals in 417 and the Alans in 418, dealing a severe blow to the western Alan king Attaches. In the aftermath of these conflicts, the remnants of the Silingi Vandals, on the brink of annihilation, turned to the Vandal king Gunderic for salvation. Gunderic, consolidating his power, subsequently claimed the Alan crown, forging a unique amalgamation of Vandal and Alan sovereignty. In 419, the following year, the Hastingi Vandals faced a defeat at the hands of a combined Roman-Suebi coalition. Who would have thought? Prompting Gunderic to seek refuge in Baetica, where he ascended as the king of the Silingi Vandals as well. Yet Gunderic's ambitions seemed to know no bounds. In 422, he decisively routed a formidable coalition, led by the Roman patrician Castinus, at the Battle of Tarraco. Many Roman and Gothic troops, impressed by Gunderic's prowess, defected to his cause, swelling his ranks even further. Good news for Gunderic. Well, over the ensuing years, Gunderic's leadership was quite well received, and the Vandals got busy unleashing widespread havoc across the western Mediterranean, pillaging the Balearic Islands, Hispania, and Mauritania. They laid siege to cities such as Cartagena and Seville, asserting their dominance over the maritime domain. And, yes, they did manage to break and damage pretty much everything, and that's where we get the modern word vandalism from. In 428, Gunderic's life met a dramatic end, as he succumbed while besieging a church of all places in Seville. His half-brother, Genseric, ascended to the Vandal throne, despite his illegitimate birth. Under Genseric's astute leadership, the Vandals decided to depart Spain in 429, leaving the region largely under Roman control until 439, when the Sueves made significant inroads. Not the Suebi, Suebes. Now Genseric, often hailed as the most adept leader of the migration period by historians, left quite a mark on history. His actions likely contributed more to the downfall of Rome than any of his contemporaries. Despite their numerical inferiority among the Hispano-Roman population, the Vandals, through sheer force and strategic acumen, asserted their dominance. In a twist of fate, shortly after assuming the throne, Genseric faced a formidable challenge from the rear, as a large force of Suebi, under the command of Heremegarius, launched an assault. Yet, in a dramatic turn of events, the Suebi army was vanquished near Merida, with their leader meeting his demise in the Gaudiana River, reportedly drowning. In 429, under the leadership of Genseric, also known as Gaiseric, the Vandals embarked on a momentous journey, crossing the Mediterranean to North Africa. While the precise numbers of this migration remain somewhat uncertain, estimates suggest that they could have fielded an army numbering between 15,000 to 20,000 warriors. According to the accounts of Procopius, Their arrival in Africa was facilitated by Bonifacius, the regional military ruler who harbored aspirations of independence or even imperial authority. Having resisted several Roman attempts to subdue him, Bonifacius found himself subdued by the Gothic Count of Africa, Sigismund, who captured key cities including Hippo Regius and Carthage. Advancing along the coast, the Vandals encountered Bonifacius on the Numidian border in May and June of 430. Negotiations began, and negotiations stopped, culminating in a decisive defeat for Bonifacius. Retreating to the sanctuary of Hippo Regius, he found himself besieged by the Vandals. But that was okay, because Saint Augustine and his clergy were there and sought divine intervention to stave off the defenders. Unfortunately for them, the divine intervention did not come. Tragically, on August 28, 430, St. Augustine breathed his last within the walls of Hippo Regius, leaving behind a void that reverberated throughout the Western Roman Empire. Galla Placidia, the regent of the Western Empire, alarmed by the potential repercussions of losing her emperor's crucial grain source, marshaled reinforcements from Italy. In a concerted effort, she persuaded her nephew Theodosius II, the Eastern Roman Emperor, to dispatch an army led by Aspar to North Africa. And by the way, Africa was essentially the grain box of the Roman Empire at the time. Every single day, ships would go back and forth, bringing grain to the empire proper. Certainly the bread box. What did I say? Grain box. My goodness. Well, back to it. By July and August of 431, Genseric had lifted the siege of Hippo Regius, allowing Bonifacius to retreat to Carthage, where he joined forces with Aspar's army. In the ensuing months, Genseric decisively defeated the combined might of Bonifacius and Aspar, securing Hippo Regius unopposed. Subsequently, Genseric and Aspar negotiated a tentative peace, and upon seizing Hippo Regius, Genseric established it as the inaugural capital of the Vandal kingdom. That's right, the roaming barbarians now had their own kingdom. The treaty between the Romans and Vandals in 435 granted the Vandals control over Mauritania and the western half of Numidia. However, Genseric opted to arbitrage the treaty of 439, launching an audacious assault on the province of Africa Proconsularis. Seizing Carthage on October the 19th of the same year without resistance, Genseric made it the focal point of his burgeoning realm, styling himself the king of the Vandals and the Alans. Under Genseric's rule, the Vandals extended their dominion to encompass Sardinia, Corsica, and the Balearic Islands. Despite their failure to conquer Sicily, their incursions prompted little reaction from the Western Roman Empire, preoccupied with conflicts elsewhere. Theodosius II dispatched an expedition against the Vandals in 441, but it never progressed beyond Sicily. The Western Empire, under Valentinian III, secured peace with the Vandals in 442, ceding significant territories to them in exchange for recognition of their sovereignty over proconsular Africa. This marked the dawn of the Vandal kingdom as an independent entity, officially recognized in former Roman lands. Over the ensuing 3.5 decades, Genseric, with his formidable fleet at his command, embarked on a relentless campaign of plunder along the coasts of both the Eastern and Western empires. Vandal incursions were so pervasive and impactful that the Old English term for the Mediterranean Sea became Wendelsee, or the Sea of Vandals. Following the demise of Attila the Hun, the Romans, relieved of immediate threats, redirected their focus towards the Vandals, who now held sway over some of the most affluent territories of the former Roman realm, and the Romans wanted them back. In a bid to broker peace and incorporate the Vandals back within the Roman fold, Valentinian III extended an offer of marriage between his daughter and Genseric's son. However, Rome's internal turmoil once again intervened. Petronius Maximus, seizing the Western throne by force, orchestrated the assassination of Valentinian III and compelled his widow, Empress Licinia Eudoxia, into a new marriage alliance. The breakdown of diplomatic relations between the two powers culminated in a pivotal moment in 455. With a plea for assistance from Licinia Eudoxia, Genseric's son led the Vandals in a triumphant march into Rome. The city, along with the Empress and her daughters, Eudocia and Placidia, fell into the hands of the Vandals. Chronicler Prosper of Aquitaine recounts a dramatic encounter between Genseric and Pope Leo the Great on June 2nd, 455. In a desperate bid to avert bloodshed and devastation, good luck with that, the Pope beseeched Genseric to refrain from wanton violence and limit his ambitions to simply pillaging the city. While the influence of the Pope's intervention remains a subject of debate, the Vandals actually departed Rome laden with untold riches, and Eudoxia, along with her daughter Eudocia, were transported to North Africa, marking yet another tumultuous saga of Vandal dominance. No, either way, they left Rome in a right mess. Think about in those movies when you have the aftermath of a teenage party. Think about that, but the entire city. Oh, how the mighty fall. In the aftermath of their audacious and unthinkable raid on Rome, and their relentless piracy in the Mediterranean, the Vandal kingdom found itself in the crosshairs of the Roman Empire's retaliation. In 456, Western Roman general Ricimer dealt a significant blow to Vandal ambitions when he ambushed and defeated a menacing Vandal fleet of 60 ships near Agrigentum and Corsica. The following year, in 457, Western Emperor Majorian achieved a decisive victory over a combined Vandal-Berber force returning from a plundering expedition in Campania, catching them off guard at the mouth of the Garigliano River. Also, quickly about the Berbers. They are a native Egyptian people. Now, the interesting thing is, they were some of the first of the Egyptians to convert to Christianity, and the majority of them still are in our modern day. They speak their own Berber language, which is quite far removed from Arabic, and if you are ever in Egypt, and you want to hear roughly what the ancient Egyptian language sounds like, all you need to do is get up early on a Sunday morning, go down to a Orthodox church of the Berber faith, and have a listen to them, because that's the closest you're ever going to get, and it's pretty close. Well, back to the Vandals. Their sack of Rome and continued maritime incursions spurred the Roman Empire into action, determined by any means necessary to dismantle the Vandal kingdom. In 460, Majorian spearheaded an expedition against the Vandals, but he suffered defeat at the Battle of Cartagena. He was, however, undeterred. In 468, both the Western and Eastern Roman empires combined their forces for a colossal assault on the Vandals under the command of Baliscus. However, the Vandals emerged triumphant at the Battle of Cap Bon, capturing the Western fleet and employing fire ships to decimate the Eastern fleet. Well, in the wake of their victory, the Vandals attempted an invasion of the Peloponnese, but they faced fierce resistance from the Maniots at Canopus, suffering heavy losses. Infuriated by this defeat, the Vandals resorted to barbaric reprisals, taking 500 hostages at Zakynthos, mutilating them, and hurling their remains overboard en route to Carthage. Too far. Way too far. Despite their setbacks, the Vandals managed to gain control of Sicily in 469, only to be compelled by Odoacer to relinquish it in 477, retaining only the western port of Lilybaeum. By the 470s, the Romans opted for a policy of diplomacy rather than outright conflict with the Vandals. A treaty was then brokered between the Western general Ricimer and the Vandals, paving the way for Genseric to establish a perpetual peace with Constantinople in 476. Consequently, relations between the two powers assumed an air of normalcy, with the Vandals even minting their own coinage from 477 onwards. Now, despite their ability to withstand Roman assaults and consolidate their hold over the western Mediterranean islands, the Vandals faced formidable adversaries in the form of the Berbers. Yeah, those guys, remember them? Situated to the south of the Vandal kingdom, the Berbers inflicted two significant defeats on the Vandals between 496 and 530, underscoring the precariousness of Vandal dominance in the region. The religious divide between the Arian Vandals and their Trinitarian subjects, which include Catholics and Donatists, served as a persistent source of tension within the African state that was ruled by Vandals. Under Genseric's rule, Catholic bishops often faced exile or execution, while lay people were barred from holding office and frequently subjected to seizure of their assets. However, Genseric displayed a degree of leniency towards his Catholic subjects during periods of amicable relationships with Rome and Constantinople. For instance, during the years 454 to 57, when relations were more or less cordial, Genseric allowed the Catholic community in Carthage to elect Deogratius as their bishop. Similarly, during the peaceful years of 476 to 77, Bishop Victor of Cartagena was able to challenge Arianism without facing repercussions from Genseric. Now, the succession of Genseric by his son Huneric marked a significant shift in policy towards Trinitarian Christians. Huneric issued edicts in 483 and in the following year, 484, aimed at marginalizing Catholics and elevating Arianism as the primary religion in North Africa. While some Vandal kings, such as Hilderic, displayed a degree of tolerance towards Trinitarians, most pursued policies of rampant persecution, including banning Vandals from converting to Trinitarianism, exiling bishops, and imposing hardships on Trinitarian communities, of which there were quite a few. Thrasimund, who ruled from 496 to 523, continued the Vandal policy of religious intolerance, but he had opted for bloodless persecutions rather than overt violence. Despite these efforts, the decline of Vandal power persisted, marked by internal strife and external pressures from neighboring powers. Hilderic, who ruled from 523 to 530, actually stands out as the most tolerant towards the Catholic Church. Under his reign, religious freedom was granted, allowing Catholic synods to convene once again in North Africa. However, Hilderic showed little inclination for warfare, delegating military matters to his relative, Hoamer. When Hoamer faced a setback against the Moors, the Arian faction within the royal family seized the opportunity to stage a revolt, championing the cause of national Arianism. Gelimer, Hilderic's cousin, emerged as the leader of this faction and ascended to the throne in 530, with Hilderic, Hoamer, and their kin all ending up moving in together. To a prison, I mean. Not good. A bit of a downgrade from being royalty, don't you think? Now, the Byzantine Emperor Justinian I perceived Gelimer's ascension as an opportunity to intervene in North Africa, aiming to reinstate Hilderic to the Vandal throne. However, Gelimer, fearful of Hilderic's potential return, ordered his cousin's execution in 533. Meanwhile, a significant portion of the Vandal military, led by Gelimer's brother, Sazo, was dispatched to Sardinia to quell a rebellion, and this left Carthage vulnerable to Byzantine forces commanded by the great Belisarius. Of course, Belisarius would capitalize on the situation, landing unopposed near Carthage and engaging Gelimer's forces at the Battle of Ad Decimum. Despite initial Vandal success, Gelimer's resolve faltered after the deaths of his brother Amatus and nephew Gibamund, prompting him to flee. Belisarius swiftly sieged Carthage. But it wasn't over for the Vandals. Their resistance persisted. A decisive showdown occurred on December 15th, 533, at the Battle of Tricamarum, where Gelimer's forces were once again defeated, this time following the fall of his brother Zazo. With Carthage and Hippo under Byzantine control, Gelimer surrendered to Belisarius in 534. And with that, it marks the end of the Vandal kingdom. Well, what happened next? North Africa reverted to a Roman province, expelling the Vandals from the region. Many of the Vandals managed to integrate with the Berbers in places like Salde, while others sought refuge in the Gothic kingdoms, or even entered imperial service. Some Vandal women married Byzantine soldiers, settling in North Africa and Tunisia. The remaining Vandal warriors were mostly incorporated into the Byzantine army, with Gelimer himself receiving estates in Galatia, but declining a patrician rank due to his adherence to Arianism. Eventually, as a distinct ethnic group at least, the Vandals disappeared from historic records, simply bred out of existence. Despite attempts at rebellion, such as that led by Gunterith in 546, the Vandal presence in North Africa just slowly dwindled away, with some migrating back to Spain, but the rest simply lost to the pages of time. And with that, we reach the end of our history of the Vandals. Did you learn something? I hope you did, because that was the entire point of the video, right? I'd like to thank my Mega Chad tier patron Stark Factory for his contribution to the channel, and I'd like to thank everybody who's watched the video up to this point. It's pretty good of you to make it this far, and if you have, why not consider subscribing, leaving your comments down below, and hitting that like button. It helps out more than you would know. But until next time, look after yourself, those around you, and drink plenty of water. Good night, everybody.